Hey guys, Josh with Daily Mountain Bike Rider, and I'm super stoked to make this video because this is my top 5 budget hardtails for 2018. For those of you who haven't seen my videos before, I make a ton of videos about bike reviews and all sorts of stuff. And the one question I get more than any other is, what is this bike right here behind me? And I think the reason is most of you want to know what's a great aggressive geometry hardtail that you can ride for a couple of years and just keep up with the rest of your friends. So since this bike that I have that I'm going to talk about in a second here isn't available anymore, I wanted to tell you guys where you can find a great hardtail for the money. But before I jump into my top 5, let me tell you what you should be looking for when you're looking for a hardtail. Now, here's my hardtail. This is a 2017 Rally, and this is the Tokel 3. You may have seen this on Skills with Phil's video, and the reason I bought the bike is because I saw how Phil talked about what to look for and how hard he rode it. So the things I look for, first off, is aggressive geometry. What that means is you want a fork that's going to be a little more forked out, and you want a chainstay, which is the distance from your crank back to the axle, to be shorter, so the bike is just really easy to throw around and yet still very comfortable going down steep downhills and all sorts of terrain. So you want aggressive geometry. Along with that, the things I look for are things like at least 120 millimeters of travel on the fork, and I really like air sprung suspension. That way you can adjust it to your weight. Along with that, things that are an absolute must-have for me is a 1x drivetrain, so you're not dealing with a front derailleur, and I love the 1x11 drivetrains. Hydraulic brakes, both front and rear, and ideally brakes from a company like SRAM or Shimano. And then last but not least, a good set of tubeless ready tires and tubeless ready rims. Now, most bikes in the 2018 category that I'll be looking at have most of these, but the one thing that's a big bonus would be to have a dropper seat post. And if you don't know, that just means you have a lever so you can drop your seat post on an instant and pop it back up on all sorts of trails. So, those are the things I look for, but what bikes are currently out there that are worth buying and how much are they going to cost? Now here's what I found. The price point for these is anywhere from $800–900 up to $1,300, and this is in US dollars. Now for some of you, that's a lot of money, but I found that's about the budget you need to have to buy a bike that's going to hold up to anything you throw at it. So without further ado, here are my top 5 budget hardtails for 2018. We're going to go in order from least expensive to most expensive. And first up is the Vitus Centaur Plus hardtail. Now, this comes with a Dior 1x10 drivetrain and is a 2018 and is just $950. Now, the reason this hardtail stood out to me, if you go down to the specs, is that it has a Shimano Dior shifters rear derailleur. It's got an 11x42 cassette, which is just a 10-speed, and I have ridden this drivetrain and it works phenomenally. Along with that, it's got great rims that are tubeless ready. It's got good wheels that are tubeless ready. And most importantly, it has really good Shimano brakes. Looking at suspension, it has 140 millimeters of travel, which is a great amount for an aggressive hardtail and a ton of fun. And that is a RockShox Recon RL, and that is of course a solo air damper. So you get a great bike, tubeless ready wheels, and a fork that's going to last a long time, all for $950. This is a great deal for a hardtail. Next up is the Commencal Meta Hardtail AM, which I think stands for amateur. This one comes in at $1,100. And just looking at the bike, there's a couple things that are an upgrade for the cost compared to the Vitus that we just looked at. First is you get a SRAM drivetrain, which is the NX 1x11, which is tried and true to last a really long time. Looking at the other specs of this bike, you see that it also has a Recon RL, and this has 150 millimeters of travel. That's what I currently have on my Rally Tokel, and it didn't come with that, and man, it's a ton of fun. Along with that, some other things to note about the bike is it has Tektro brakes, which aren't as good as Shimano or SRAM, but they work pretty well. I wish they were a little bit different. Besides that, it has great WTV rims. It's got good Maxxis Recon Plus size tires. So you're getting a 2.8 tire on here, which gets a little more trail dampening, which is super nice on a hardtail. And last but not least, it does not have a dropper post, but it's coming from a brand like Commencal, which is really well known to have a lot of value for a little bit of price. Next up is one I'm really excited about, and this is the Newproof Scout 275 Race. Now, this is $1,100, just like the Commencal, so it's pretty cool to see these side by side. This bike is very similar in that it has an NX drivetrain 1x11, but let's look down at some of the other specs. It's got a Maxxis Minion DHF, and this is a 2.6, and that's both front and rear, which are really great aggressive tires. It's got Shimano Dior M6000 brakes. These are the best brakes, I think, on any of these bikes, and those brakes are a lot like XT. They have the same feel, just not as much as a little bit fancier features. Other things to note about this is it's got very aggressive geometry. Newproof is known for making bikes that can take a beating, and overall, you're getting a really great bike with great wheels, great tires, and everything you need to have a bike that lasts a long time. Next up is an interesting one, and one I'll probably get some flack for. It's a Trek bike. That's right. Trek has been working really hard to get their price points down, and they introduced this bike. I'm going to butcher its name, but it's Rosco. It's the Rosco 8. So you can see in the picture, it has an NX 1x11 drivetrain. It has a great RockShox fork, and you'll notice it has a dropper seat post. That's why the price is $160 more than the Commencal and the Nukeproof. But let's look at the specs and see if it really is everything we need. So you get a RockShox Judy, which is different than the Recon on the other bikes. The Judy's pretty similar, but the Judy I think is just a scotch nicer. And this is a solar air sprung, and you only get 120 millimeters of travel. You don't need 140 and 150, but it is nice to have it at times. Looking at the rims, they are tubeless ready. It's a low-end brand, and the tires are Schwalbe. And these are great tubeless ready tires that are going to be fine. Not as aggressive as Maxxis, but will work well. Other things to note about this bike is it comes with Shimano M315 brakes, which are really good brakes, not as good as the M600. And like I said, it has a dropper seat post, even though I think it is just like an in-house brand from Trek. So this bike has very similar geometry to the other bikes, only 150 millimeters of travel, but you get a seat post and a drivetrain and tires, and really you don't need to change a thing for $1,260. Okay, bike number 5, last but not least, the most expensive, but for a pretty obvious reason, is the Diamondback Mason 2. This bike has big old plus size tires on it. It's got a great SRAM NX 1x11 drivetrain. It's got a nice dropper seat post, and really it has everything you need to have a nice bike that rips down the trail. This also has the RockShox Judy, and this is the gold versus the silver on the Trek. It's 120 millimeters of travel. Looking at the crankset, you actually get a race face effect crankset, which is really nice. Other noticeable things about the bike include you get a great set of rims because they're the Diamondback Blanchards, and those things are pretty bulletproof, as Seth has shown. You get super aggressive Maxxis Minion DHF and DHR at 2.8, which are top of the line tires. And the brake set is the SRAM Level Ts. I actually have these on my Tokel. They are a great brake set. Unlike the guides, they only have 2 pistons, but they're super strong, really responsive, and they work well. Besides that, that dropper seat post is a brand that isn't known as much. It's called the JD Allo, but it's an internal dropper, and if it's anything like the rest of the bikes Diamondback makes, it can take a beating and it will do a great job. So all of those bikes fit the criteria that I said at the beginning, and I would buy any of these bikes, and honestly, all these bikes are a better deal than the Tokel I bought last year. I need to upgrade the tires, which I still haven't done yet. I had to put a dropper seat post on. I had to replace the handlebars and the stem to make them longer and a little better than the ones that came on it. So here's my encouragement. Go take a look at these bikes. If you can, go try them out before you buy them. But at the end of the day, find what bike price point works for you and get a bike that you can ride for a long time, not that you have to constantly fix, that you can really enjoy the trails on. All right, that's it for me, Josh from Daily Mountain Bike Rider, but you know what time it is. Don't watch too many YouTube videos, but go out and ride your bike, and make sure you do it every single